11 out of 13. That is correct. 11 out of 13. If you guys are new here, my name is AJ. In the last video, I gave my predictions for UFC 310, and today I want to give my reaction. And as you guys heard, I got 11 out of the 13 fights I predicted correct. And I know there's 14 fights that happened for UFC 310. I ended up not saying my prediction for the Kennedy fight, but I was probably going to have him winning. He ended up winning in the first round by a knockout. A little late in the first round, but he was able to get that knockout win in the first round by like a quick one, too. It was pretty nice. But out of the 13 fights I predicted, I did get 11 right, so only 2 wrong, and I like to say that's pretty good. Maybe it was an easy night to make predictions, but anyways, though, let's just jump right into my reaction of UFC 310 Pantoja versus Asakura. Starting with the main event, Pantoja versus Asakura. Normally, I don't like starting with the main event, but there is quite a lot to talk about, a little bit, I guess. But we're just gonna work our way down instead. Pantoja ended up winning via submission against Asakura. Asakura was landing some pretty good shots, had some pretty nice knees, one straight to the dome when Pantoja was, I think, going for like a takedown. Then he had another to the liver. Neither of these really looked like it had an effect on Pantoja. Pantoja, I guess, is known to have a pretty good chin. But yeah, he's a tough dude. Took those knees like it was nothing. I think any other fighter probably would have been hurt by those knees, but Pantoja is pretty tough. And he ended up rocking Asakura in the first round, I believe. But I'm not sure if he knew. It didn't really matter though. He ended up submitting Asakura in the second round. And it was a pretty good fight. Pantoja looked pretty dominant. Asakura, he looked exciting. But yeah, it wasn't really enough to get the win, and he ended up losing. I did have Asakura winning this fight. This was one of the 2 fights that I got wrong for the night. But I know a lot of people probably thought that Asakura didn't deserve the title shot, and I was kind of one of them. I don't really like people that get immediate title shots, I guess. But I mean, it kind of made sense. He was just kind of at the right time, in the right spot in the right time, I guess, because who else would Pantoja have really fought for UFC 310? Um, if we're being honest, because if we look at the ranking, he's beat most of these people already. He's beat Royval, he's beat Moreno. I don't think he's beat Amir, but Amir, I think, just lost to Moreno, so it wouldn't really make sense for him to have fought Pantoja. There is Kai Car France. I think that's probably the next fight for him. But yeah, Pantoja's kind of in that position where he's lapping the division. Pretty dominant champ right now. I don't know if this is really updated. Like, I refreshed it. This is a few days after the event. I normally like trying to wait for this to update, but it just isn't updating because like Joshua Van is not here either, and he just beat rank number 14. I don't even know where that is. Cody right here, ranked number 14. Joshua Van just beat him, but he's not up here for some reason. And I think these would have changed around a little bit. I think Pantoja should probably be a little higher on pound for pound ranking if we're being honest. Um, but yeah, overall, Pantoja looked very dominant. I think probably Kai Kara France is the next fight for him to take on. I think it is a good thing that the UFC brought Kai Asakura to the UFC, because I think this flyweight division is kind of getting a little stale. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with Mighty Mouse, where like we just have a dominant champ, and then I mean lapping the division. So to bring more exciting fighters to the division can maybe spark a little bit of interest into the division right now. But for Kai Asakura, he'd probably take on someone like Brandon Moreno. I think that'd be a pretty interesting fight. I like to see that fight happen. I'm not sure if the UFC gives him that fight after the loss to Pantoja and the way that he lost to Pantoja. It might give him someone like Urseg, which would probably also make sense. But I'd probably like to see the Moreno fight. I think it would make the most sense for Moreno too, based on where he's at in the division right now. I wouldn't want to see him. I wouldn't want to see him fight Royval again. And he just beat Amir, and I think Kai was probably going to fight for the belt. So I think that kind of makes the most sense for Kai. Overall, it is an interesting position that Pantoja is in right now. He is in that position where he's doing very dominant, and maybe he might be moving up in the division to fight someone in the bantamweight. Maybe he fights for the belt in the bantamweight. I don't think he will, or I don't think it would be maybe a smart move. I really don't know how that would go, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Getting into the co-main event, we had Shavkat versus Ian Gary. This fight was, I mean, it was not the best. I thought that Shavkat might have maybe made this a more dominant fight. Supposedly, I guess these guys sparred with each other before, and so I guess they know each other's game. And maybe that is why the fight was the way it was. They were both undefeated going into this fight, and maybe that also had an effect on it because I feel like they were just trying to play it safe and try to get the win, but not really lose their donut. But Ian Gary ended up losing the fight, unanimous decision. It was a 5 round fight. I think Shavkat was like had a 100% finish rate before this fight as well. But he's gonna be fighting for the belt next, I believe, against Bilal, which makes sense. They brought Bilal to the cage. I'm not really a fan of when they do this. I think they should just let the fighter that won that night to just have their night, not really think about the next fight for a little bit at least, but saying straight away, here's the dude you are fighting and bring them into the cage with you is a little doing too much in my opinion. Ian Gary, he looked all right as well. Ended up losing. Not really sure what's gonna be next for him. But for the next fight, Sorogan versus Alexander Volkov, this fight had a little bit of drama, I guess, because of the judges. And oh yeah, that was also one thing. Not a lot of these fights went to the judges. A lot of these were kind of finishes, which made the night a lot more interesting. This is one of them that went to the judges, and like they normally say, don't let the fight go to the judges, because you never know how they're gonna judge it. And this is one of them that was a clear example of that. Volkov, a lot of people thought he got robbed. Well, I think everyone thinks that he got robbed, and even Cyril Gahn seemed that he knew it as well. And I can respect Gahn for being honest. He said he didn't like his performance after the fight. He just wanted to leave. He ended up coming back to do his interview. But I think giving the interview was a good thing, and being honest as well is a good thing because we had that whole incident with Paddy Pimblett where Paddy Pimblett got like a robbery win and wasn't humble about it at all. Said he dominated the fight or something, but everyone knew that he lost, and it wasn't a good look for him. But yeah, glad Cyril was kind of honest about it. I'm not sure what the UFC is gonna do about it because on paper, Gon got the win. And this kind of is a big fight. They are ranked 2 and 3, and this kind of determines who's going to be fighting for the belt next. Well, it all kind of depends what John Jones is doing, and if he's going to be fighting Tom Aspinall. But that, yeah, this kind of decision determines really people's career right here, and if they're going to fight for the belt or not, which was kind of a big thing. But I kind of want to see how the UFC is going to handle this. Dana was talking to Volkov after the fight, saying that he got messed up or something like that. Like they really messed up. But yeah, interesting to see what the UFC will do about this fight. For the Bryce Mitchell fight versus Kron Gracie, this fight was a little weird. Kron Gracie trying to take that Gracie jiu-jitsu and show it off or something. Very jiu-jitsu heavy. It was kind of a weird fight. He kept pulling guard. A really weird thing to do in the UFC. Maybe he was just trying to show that how good jiu-jitsu is. But Bryce Mitchell, he is a black belt as well, and he's good at jiu-jitsu. He didn't really use it that much. I feel like he might have looked a little scared, but I mean Gracie, he wasn't really going for submission attempts that much, except like when he tried to get like an arm triangle. But they were just kind of sitting in guard. He was pulling guard, and it seemed like for no reason. And then he pulled guard, and then Mitchell slammed him, do a few elbows, and got the knockout. I think that was kind of the right thing to do, because yeah, as like a fan seeing him pull guard and then he getting punished for it is pretty exciting. I think it was the best kind of outcome for Bryce. Uh, but I would have liked to see maybe a more stylistic technical jiu-jitsu match if it really came to that. I don't know why this fight was really in the main card. I feel like some of the prelims should have been maybe here instead of this fight. I don't know what the UFC really thought this fight was going to be like. Maybe they're just trying to promote Bryce a little more, get his name out there, build his character. But yeah, overall, Bryce got the win. It was a good win, and I don't know who he would be fighting next. The next fight, the first fight of the main card, Nate versus Duho Choi. This fight was actually pretty interesting. Duho Choi looked very dominant. He looked very good, very calm as well. Nate looked very eager, high adrenaline. I don't know if he had like an adrenaline dump or something, but Duo Choi was piecing him up. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, total strikes 32 to 114. That's a big difference. Duo Choi, he looked very dominant. It is exciting to see him do good in the UFC again. I think he's been in here for quite a while. 2014, 10 years, 2024. Yeah, I'm not sure what's next for him. Looks very good. I was kind of hoping this fight would be a little more interesting. But yeah, Duo Choi very dominant, looked good. Not too much more to say about that. The Gon fight though, I am gonna have to thank the judges real quick. Going back to this fight, just because they saved me from getting another prediction wrong. So yeah, all of these fights I got right. Judges kind of saved me on this one. This one I got wrong. But going into the prelims, Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith. Uh, I don't know too much about the whole Anthony Smith situation. I know that it is kind of someone that is close to him, which is very sad thing and a hard thing to go through, especially like with a whole fight coming up. But yeah, he did look very emotional, and it is all kind of understandable. I don't know I don't know if he should have taken this fight. He ended up taking it though. Said something about retiring. Not sure if he will retire. I think they tried to ask him about it later on, and he didn't really respond. I think it was his wife, like was talking to Chael Sonnen. Didn't really say too much. Just said that some stuff to think about, which makes sense. I think it isn't the right time to make such a big claim. Yeah, being over emotional going into a fight is a pretty hard thing to do. I think he might retire, and I think it'll make sense if he does. Not trying to see him in that position again. It was pretty hard to watch. Now, Vicente Luque versus Timba Garimbo. He had that very nice anaconda choke in the first round. It was a very quick finish. Thimba ended up losing all his air when going to sleep. It was a pretty big win for Vicente, and I think the win that he needed. I think people kind of thought he was going to lose fight, but yeah, he ended up winning in the first round. Very dominant performance. He got performance of the night, and I think that is well deserved. And I think it is a good thing that he got this win. Excited to see what's next for him and his next fight. Movzar versus Aljamain Sterling. This fight I think was actually pretty interesting. 3 rounds, but ended up going to the decisions. This fight was very fast paced, and it was very kind of technical. They were scrambling a lot. I'm not sure if it was really a size difference or a skill difference, maybe a little bit of both. But Mozart had a little bit of an edge on the ground against Sterling. He was backpacking the backpack. And yeah, I actually kind of enjoyed this fight. Mozart ended up winning. I'm not sure what's next for him as well because he has a lot of pretty big wins under his belt, under his name. And Aljamain Sterling is also a pretty big name. I mean, it wasn't really his starting kind of weight class. He ended up moving up in weights, but I feel like when you do even fight just a former champion from even another weight, it is still a pretty big win. And he's ranked number 5 right now. But yeah, I'm not sure what is next for him. But yeah, I enjoyed this fight. It was pretty good and very fast paced, very technical. Next, we had the Ryan Brown versus Brian Battle fight. Brian Battle ended up taking this win. Randy Brown, he looked like he was throwing some pretty nice punches. They looked like they were pretty heavy, but Brian Battle ended up taking the split decision win. But yeah, it was a pretty big win for Brian Battle. I had him in my predictions, and he ended up winning. And I think this was a good fight for him to test his kind of skills. It was a pretty interesting fight. Randy Brown did look good as well, and I'm not sure what's next for either of these two. Brian Battle is making his name a little bit, and he's probably gonna fight someone in the rankings next. I think that makes the most sense. Not sure where that would be, but yeah, I think that's the next fight to make someone in the top 15, definitely for sure. Chris Weidman versus Eric. This fight was, I don't know, Chris Weidman maybe should be retiring. I was watching the the post show, and they were talking about if Chris Weidman should be retiring. And I think, I mean, it might make a little sense. He did go through a lot of surgery to come back, but it didn't look good for him. He ended up losing with like 10 seconds left in the second round. And I'm not sure what the UFC is going to do with him. Chris Weidman is, I mean, he has a nice history, a good history, pretty big legacy. I'm not sure if he should damage it by continuing to fight, especially with the way he looked. He's been in the UFC for quite a long time. I mean, look at this resume. It goes all the way down here at 2011. That is a lot of fights. Yeah, but I'm not sure what the UFC is going to do with Chris Weidman. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. Michael ended up winning in the third round. I think he had like a one arm rear naked choke. Beat Max Griffin. Michael Chiesa, very pretty dominant on the floor. Can get your back, and he ended up getting Max's back and winning. Clay Guida versus Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper, I think this was like the biggest age difference in a UFC fight, but Chase Hooper, I think he was projected to win this fight. I mean, minus 1,000. He ended up winning it, and yeah, he looked good. It was like an armbar, and yeah, he looked dominant. He looked good. I mean, I don't know if it was the age difference or stuff, but I think Chase needs to maybe fight someone closer to his age. I don't know what's next for Clay. I'm not sure if he said he's retiring or anything, but 3 fight losing streak, dang. I mean, Clay has also been in the UFC for a while as well. Yeah, that's a lot of fights. Another dude with a really big resume. 2009, 2007. Jeez, 2006. Yeah, he's definitely a different generation of the UFC, facing on a new generation, and I think maybe it's time for that new generation, but not sure what they are going to do. I'm not sure if he said anything or if the UFC said anything. Haven't really looked into that. And then we had the Kennedy fight where yeah, he got that round one knockout with a little nice 1-2. But overall, I think UFC 310 had a little bit of everything. I think overall though, this card was pretty good. This was kind of like one of the only cards, except like maybe UFC 300 where I watched since like the early prelims all the way to the main event. And yeah, I think overall this all the fights were pretty good. Pretty good event. Had a little bit of everything. Had that little bit of drama as well with the Cyril Gahn and Volkov. I think this was a good last pay per view before 2024 ends. There are still some fight nights happening. I think the next one is Kobe Covington versus Buckley, and I think that's in 2 weeks or next week, something like that. And that fight is going to be pretty good as well. But yeah, I think this was a good way to end the year. And I'm excited to see what's next for a lot of these fighters, especially like someone like Kai Asakura. Excited to see where he goes next in the UFC. And yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys thought about UFC 310 down in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, smack that subscribe button as well. I'll see you guys on the next video. Don't forget to stay fresh.